This is the Lazy Women Podcast.
Because what we grow up with feels like home. So because what we
Hi everyone, welcome to the Lazy Women Podcast. Today I have two guests with me, Anshita Koul and Mari Volar, two international comedians and the co-founders of the Clit Comedy Club. Thank you both for joining me.
Hello.
Hello.
Good to have you.
That was unison. That was beautiful.
So you are both creators of the Clit Comedy Club, an inclusive feminist comedy space that offers its audiences a chance to see up-and-coming comedians showcasing their material, all while conducting a scientific study to determine once and for all whoever thought women are not funny, right? Wow, that was long.
Oh, that is actually a little bit cringe because most of the shit I just wrote on a whim because I had to press publish.
Yeah. And it's the first time someone has said it out loud to us because it's usually us saying the same thing to each other.
Yeah.
It's the first time someone else has said it out loud. And
Yeah.
it sounds very good and cringy, like Mari said.
Yeah. It basically, this is the first time anybody has actually given a shit. So this is great.
All right, so tell me the story behind the comedy club. Why did you create it?
Do you want the honest story or the PR approved story?
Well, honest story would be best.
Well, the honest story.
It was the pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. The honest story was there was a pandemic. Travel was difficult and I was very poor and I wanted to be on stage, and I realized that the only way I could do that is if I produced my own shows, but I didn't know what I was doing, so I was like, I need somebody to help me. And then I met Anshita, who had been in the game for way longer, and was like, hey, I'm great at creative, but I hate admin, so if you do all of that, I'm in. And here we are 3 years later, whatever it is.
So how did you meet, actually?
On a Tinder date. No.
This is how I meet most of my friends, actually. But no, we were set up by a mutual acquaintance in comedy who knew that we were both in Cologne, which is where I still live. And Cologne at the time had like 3.5 comedians in it. So I didn't know anybody. And so Anshita was here and we were put in touch, and then everything else is history. And very sordid. We can't discuss it in public.
Of course.
Yeah. I got a message from Mari and I was like, all right. And we met in Cologne at a cafe and we discovered that we're just twins.
Yeah.
From two different parts of the world. Yeah. And yeah, like she said, like I was like, as long as you can handle the admin, I'm in, babe. Like, let's do it. So, because I'm not a fan of German bureaucracy. No one is. But I mean,
yeah,
there are some brave people like Mari who try to engage with it. So I was like, yeah, let's do
brave or masochistic, that is up for debate.
Yeah, I don't know which one's worse, French or German bureaucracy.
As an Indian, all of them.
And now you have this show, The Clitoris Act. Mm-hmm. Tell me a bit about it. How did you come up with it? What's the point you're trying to get across?
Once again, do you want the PR story or the honest story?
I think it's a very beautiful way how it was born, because there was no intention of like from either of us to write this, but we found there was a festival of performance art festival that was happening in Cologne, and it was more of an artsy kind of a festival, and the theme was bodies. And we realized that, we can maybe create a show which revolves around this theme, bodies. And we have a lot of experience with this subject. And that's how we started writing the show to apply to this festival. And of course, we tried to use different forms like theater, comedy. It was not just pure stand-up comedy. And we came up with everything, the blurbs, the whole thesis and everything, but we did not get it in the festival.
Of course.
Yeah. So we were like, now we have a show, but we don't know what to do with it. So we started applying to more festivals. And then we got into one of the festivals, and that was the first time we performed the show. And yeah, after that, it's been quite a while. And since, we've been changing the show, taking it on small tours. I think this is the first time it's going to be like a 5 big city tour.
Yeah.
But we've been performing the show since September 2021, and it's gotten really interesting, and it's grown, it's evolved as well. And yeah, we're very happy and confident with the show, I think now. So I mean, we have to be. We're taking it on a tour, so
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I should have done some statistics beforehand, but I just quickly counted. We've been to 4 countries already, about 6 different cities so far, and now we're gonna take it to, well, 4 more countries then, I guess. No, 3 more countries. I can't.
world domination. Yeah.
World domination. But yeah, basically, long story short, there was a festival about bodies. We were like, wow, we both have one. Great, let's talk about it. And now we have a show.
Amazing. And well, some of the topics you cover, kind of queerness, catcalling, fat shaming, being an immigrant, all of this,
Yeah.
they are very politicized. Do you consciously use, I guess, humor as political activism, or is that kind of a result of talking about the just something outside of the male experience?
I want to pretend to be like, yes, it's an yes, we actually sat down and were like, we were going to change the world. I think it's more of a consequence.
Yeah. So sorry, I thought about it, and it's such a weird thing to say that, hey, these topics are really politicized. It's literally our life. Like, that is literally what we live. We are both immigrants. We are both women. We are both fat. We are both queer. Like, this is just our existence. So really, like, to think that, oh, my existence is so politicized and so polarized. It's like, for fuck's sake, mostly I just want to walk down to the supermarket and get bread, And so the fact that so many people think that these topics are these like huge, important, like they are huge and important, absolutely. But at the same time, it's like, I can't make dick jokes because I don't have a dick. So I literally need to talk about the stuff that I know. And this is the stuff that, we both know.
Yeah, I think for me, personal is political, political is personal. It's always been like this. I do not conform or relate with the idea when someone says they're apolitical. I think if someone says they're apolitical, they're just privileged or white. So it's coming from their understanding of how the world works for them on most days. So that's why they think that they don't need to be political. But actually, like, I think everybody is political because, like, inherently we have to be, because they are our imagined systems around us. We engage with that system day in, day out. So from trivial things, economy, or whether it's art, or whether it's existing as queer fat women in the society, I think it becomes political because, yeah, we are trying to take space in a world that was not designed for us originally, right? So it becomes political as a consequence of that. But when we talk or when we make comedy about whatever our experiences are, there are shared or lived experiences, and we mostly talk about our own personal experiences. But because there are so many identities that get involved, so it becomes like identity politics as well. So it might seem like, if you're watching the show, it might seem like, oh, they've carefully curated the topics, but I cannot tell you how painful it is that that these topics are our lives day in, day out. So so it's not like we consciously chose these topics. We just decided to talk about our shared and lived experiences, and here we are.
And if we would put every single thing into the show, every single topic that we live and is politicized, this show would be 4 days long. And it's not, because it's not Wagner. We can't do that shit. So it's like an hour.
It might become a podcast one day.
It might become a podcast if I get a new microphone.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess who you are is political, right? Even just like being a woman, being an immigrant, it's all political.
It is, and in a way, it's unfortunate that we have to think about it. But as Anshita said, yes, like everything we do is political. The way we vote every day with our feet, with our wallets, and like knowing that we have that power as like a community or as a group of people is really important. I think a lot of people forget that very often and think, well, all of this shit is beyond my capacity and my capabilities. Well, actually, it isn't, because all you need is enough like-minded people. And when we thought that, okay, we're going to bring this show to Budapest, I'm from the Eastern Bloc, I'm from Estonia, so I was like, oh, I have a point of reference for all of this. Yes, of course, this is my life as well. And then we actually were told some of the policies that have come out of Hungary, the last years, and so on and so forth. Then we were like, oh, okay, no, actually, yeah, this is. Are we going to be allowed in the country? And now we're selling tickets, and people are, super happy to come and see the show. So even in a society where things seem to be going backwards, we can come and do these things, and people are interested in them. And
Time travelers.
Time travelers, yes, we are time travelers from the West. No, we're not. No.
So at Lazy Women, we previously talked about the punchline gap, the idea that men achieve more laughs than women. And then there's also this concept where women tend to fake laughter to placate men. I'd like to get your kind of thoughts on that. Have you, as female comedians, experienced this gap?
Yeah.
I think that's why we're in comedy. I kind of trying to reduce the gap, but like more than as a comedian, just as a female, I think 20 years of my life, I just laughed at really bad sexist jokes. And then, of course, felt really shitty about laughing because I felt like, because at least if I speak from my experience, I was raised to kind of make people very comfortable around me. And if that person's gender is male, that's very important because in your head you're like, yeah, men are running the world, men are running the society, so of course they have more power than any other gender, like cishet men. So yeah, so I think even if I did not like the joke, or even if I found it really problematic, it was such a bodily response. It was like it had become my norm until I had the privilege of more experiences in life. I traveled more, where I realized that I don't really have to do this. And I think at some point I realized that most of these people are not funny, and I have funnier shit to say. So maybe then just laughing on these really bad sexist jokes, I should just start making my own sexist jokes. No, not sexist. But like just get into the comedy. And because I often got the one thing that I often got in India, back in India, whenever someone would make a misogynist remark or sexist joke, and if I did retaliate, if I said that, what, like, or I made a face, often the counter was like, oh, I was just joking.
Yeah.
I was just joking, and it became like, okay, if you can just say I'm just joking, you can get away with a lot of bullshit.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, then I need to start joking as well, because there's so much I want to say, right? So if you can get away with a lot of things when you're just joking, then why are women not joking? Because our entire life is equal to pain. Sometimes I feel like, and best comedy comes out of there. So I think for me, as a female than as a comedian. But of course, when I started doing comedy, that was the first thing I felt, because I started doing comedy in India. So whenever I used a cuss word, or whenever I said something which is not acceptable in the Indian society, the audience laughed, but it was a nervous laughter. They would giggle and like, oh my God, did she really say that? And then they would start laughing, and they would not give attention to the effort that I've put in the punchline, or the brains that I've put in the punchline. But they would laugh as if I was giggling them with these cuss words, or saying things that they usually don't get to hear from the women in their lives. And now there's this loudmouth woman on stage saying things, and I felt like I was like, my talent was going into waste, because at the end of the day they are going to laugh more about the fact that I exist on stage and I'm saying things, I'm speaking my mind. But if there was a male comedian who would do the same thing, he would definitely get more laughs, because men talk like that. Men use cuss words all the time. Men take space all the time. So, all of those nuances were not applied in my case. So definitely if I would say that, in fact, I remember back in India as a social experiment, male comic friend of mine and me, we did this because we had a discussion about this. So I asked him to do my punchlines on stage, and I went after him, and we got different laughs.
Well,
Hence proved.
Um, I also I love this like concept of like you know who thinks what of humor. Like this sort of dating study came out recently, and the main thing that you know kind of went viral from it was that most people say that they need their partner, or they want their partner to have a sense of humor, but then the question was, what do you count as a sense of humor? And for women, it was men who can make me laugh. And for men, it was women who can laugh at my jokes.
oh, right.
So, so like the inherent understanding of what funny is different, like in the sort of cishet world, right? And so so for me that was like an aha moment, because I've always thought, you know, you look at, you know, male comedians are like, oh yeah, and then, you know, I hooked up with this girl after the show, and like there is so much of that bravado there. And then for women it's like, oh yeah, this one guy came and told me I was funny and he was super creepy and I ran away. You know, it's like those experiences, you know, just on a very basic level are very different, which is funny. But I when I work in comedy, when I produce, I very often work with women, sometimes only with women, or at least 50% women, right, on the lineups. And so quite a long time my comedy experience was skewed from that, because I started producing very early on. So I just had women around all the time. And then when I actually, once the pandemic ended and I was traveling more and I was going into new spaces, new comedy rooms, and the notion that I then got of like, oh, I'm maybe the only woman here, or there's another one, you know, and then there's like six guys, and the literal, so not the literal, but the proverbial dick measuring contest that sometimes happen sort of backstage, and like it's all this sort of banter, and I kind of, a part of me really likes it, but a part of me also feels really uncomfortable, because I'm like, I feel like pretty actively excluded from the conversation itself, because it's the sort of bro kind of culture that very often happens. It's not like that everywhere, and luckily, at least my experience is that it's getting a lot better, and people are a lot more aware of this as time goes on. But I think also it's because we are finally talking about these things, and
Yeah.
that's an important thing to do.
Yeah, I like to say the green room is getting diverse. So, yeah.
More diverse.
Yeah.
It's still not diverse, but
Yeah.
it's better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's, I mean, it's very male dominated, right? Stand-up comedy.
Yes. So the statistics, the only like official statistics about gender representation in comedy come from the US, and the statistics are that 12 to 15% of comics are women, and in Europe, I would say at a large it's probably similar than the US, to be honest. So it's not great. Even if it is 20% in Europe, it's still like a fifth, you know.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a lot of inequality there, sort of gender wise itself.
I know that women comedians receive a lot of kind of bullying and abuse online. Has that been your experience as well? Have you had issues, and how do you deal with it?
That's why I moved to Germany. uh, yeah, so I mean, I've received death threats and rape threats as well, for making jokes. Especially, I think in India, there's a bit of the line you draw is you can't joke about historical figures, religion is off the table, and politicians, you know, if they are like very prolific, or like it's very, if they have a fan base, because in India politicians do tend to have a fan base, and which is mostly men. So a lot of my friends who are female comics based in India, they faced as well. So you then start to censor yourself, because I come from Jammu and Kashmir, Kashmir being a very politicized piece of land between India and Pakistan. As a Kashmiri, I tend to do a lot of political comedy as well. And the opinions about Kashmir in India are like completely polarized. And so, you know, if you go on stage, you are a woman and you talk about Kashmir, and if you talk about the unpopular opinions you have, yeah, they're going to come at you. So I faced that a lot there. Here it's a bit easier for me, because here when I get trolled, it's very cute. it's very cute how they troll. Like, it's more like, body shaming, or it's more like, I love dick pics. I love dick pics. Dick
No,
pics are the
Anshita, you can't say that.
no,
Stop
I
sending
have,
dick
because
pics.
I have a buffet to choose from. So I have death threats, rape threats, dick
Oh,
pics, and then just trolling. I would, if I have to make a choice, I would choose dick pics in my DMs, because dick pic has, like, it's you can perceive it as a piece of modern art. Like, there's no words, it's just a dick, and you look at it and you can perceive it the way you want. There's no explanation. But then when there's a rape threat, it's very explicit.
well, that's
It
true. Yes.
Yeah, it's
I
very
mean, yeah, but it's kind of saying like, wow, China is so free next to North Korea. Like
yeah.
it's
So of
it's
course,
like choosing
yeah.
bad or worse.
Yeah,
It's
of course,
like,
I'm being sarcastic, but it's just that if I have to choose from the buffet of DMs I receive, I
yeah,
would go for dick pics, because I think
okay.
they are the best. But no, I mean, here the amount of trolling that I personally have received, it's not up to the up to my standard. So it's like, it does not move anything inside me. It does
Yeah.
not pierce my soul. So I'm able to deal with it. But I think with Clitoris Act, we actually have a very good troll who's
Promoting us on the algorithm right now really
yeah,
well. Yeah.
yeah. And he actually declared himself as, I'm a cis het white heterosexual male. So, did you expect me to be a good person? And he's just trolling our shows. So, and we are very excited, because, it means
Yeah.
we are doing the right thing, because we've actually triggered a white male. I
Exactly.
mean,
It's organic reach. You
ex-
you 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 know, you can pay whatever you want. You can't get the organic reach like that. Yeah, I also like it. I mean, my following online is super small. And I don't really post that often, mostly because I'm very lazy, which is why I'm on the Lazy Women podcast. Yay! But I have had, yeah, it's mostly it's body shaming. And I'm not saying that body shaming is not bad. Body shaming has led people to like attempt suicide and also be successful with it, and that's horrific. But another caveat is, if this had happened to me about 10 years ago, if I had started this journey 10 years earlier, and I would be in the position that I am in today 10 years ago, I would be gutted every single time anybody said anything negative about my body, because I was telling myself awful things every single day. But I've been on a very long journey of like self-recovery in that, and relearning and unlearning all of those expectations, and realizing what my worth is outside of that perceived societal image of what a woman is supposed to do and be and look like. So now I kind of look at that as like validation. Like, somebody once trolled me, and like the cutest thing they said was that I have a face for radio, and I was like, ah, thanks. Oh my god, that's so adorable. Oh my god,
That's so
yeah. It's
old
like,
school as well.
I know, it's like, yeah, it's like AI. Like, it's a very
yeah,
badly written AI insult, basically.
yeah,
But I was like, oh my god, yeah. If only I can get one of those contracts, I wouldn't have to put on makeup, and I could talk endlessly. Give me a breakfast program already. So I can take that as validation, because to me, it's like, oh, like, my appearance is the only thing you get to go after. There is nothing else about me that you can tear down except for my appearance. Well, I'm a fucking success then, aren't I? So, but once again, confirm that if this had happened earlier in my life, when I was not in a secure enough place about myself, if I hadn't done therapy, if I hadn't realized all of these things, if I hadn't had the community around me that I have now, it would have been fucking atrocious, which is why any sort of bullying is not okay in any
yeah,
shape or form, of course.
yeah. Yeah, for me, I just remembered me. For me, like in India, body shaming is a conversation starter. So it's more about, like, I think I've been body shamed more by my extended family members, friends, people I love, people who love me. Yeah, so for me, it wasn't like, if it was like, even if a stranger was body shaming me, it was very light, because like, I have been body shamed by my own extended family, to an extent where the external trolls or DMs did not even like break a muscle, because I've been body shamed by the pros, and it's so much. It of course it ruined my relationship with my body. I have body dysmorphia. I have a very toxic relationship with food that I'm now unlearning as well. All of that has happened. Of course, I have processed that in therapy, all jokes included. Like it is a nightmare, to spend most of your life kind of hating your body, and then after that, doing so much of unlearning and rework to reconnect with your body, while everybody else in the world is still kind of following the same beauty standards. So it feels like, even if now we are unlearning, even if now we are doing the right thing, but we are so few, it still feels like a movement. Like, it feels like you're being revolutionaries to
Yeah.
just exist in your body, which sometimes is taxing, it's draining. We could have used that energy to write maybe two more shows by now, but but we have to kind of deal with
Instead,
that.
we've made the one that we have very good. Buy
And we
tickets.
talk about all of this in the show, The Clitoris Act, as well.
But it's a lot more fun because there's a lot more jokes.
Because what we grow up with feels like home. So because what we so in that because what we
Hello, dear Lazy Women podcast listener. My name is Esther, and it's my pleasure to invite you to The Clitoris Act, a two-woman theatrical comedy show by Anshita and Mari. The Clitoris Act, or two cis 30-somethings and their obnoxious views about the perils of patriarchy, is coming to Budapest on the 6th of March. After the performance, I will be moderating a Q&A to discuss the heavier themes of the show. I hope to see you there.
because what we grow up with feels like home. So because what we so in that because what we
And yeah, I actually that's something that I think I wrote into a set once as well. That basically what Anchita just said, that you think that what you leaving a comment about my body online is like hashtag sick burn. Please, it doesn't even scratch the surface of the horrendous things I used to tell myself mentally before breakfast every day. Whatever you can come up with, I've told myself worse
Yeah.
already thousands of times.
In my case, my family.
Well, yes, my family as well, but still, but it feeds into that, and I think for most of us, we are our harshest critics. I think that's like a very human trait. I don't. Maybe it's a woman thing. Maybe it's a human thing. I don't know. I have not, conducted a massive survey.
Maybe a woman thing.
People, get in touch with us via DMs. Let us know. Let's do this survey now. But we are our harshest critics. So whatever people say on the outside, it's sort of then if you are still in that downward spiral of self hatred in any shape or form, then it's kind of like confirmation. And it's the same kind of thing as with online reviews, right? If a restaurant has 100 good reviews, but two really, really bad ones, you're going to believe the bad ones, aren't you? You're like, yeah,
Yeah.
they're rats in the kitchen. It's not ratatouille, it's worse. So it's the same with yourself, right? If somebody then comes and tells you something that you suspect about yourself, it's going to hit that much harder if you haven't done the mental work needed to get out of it. And it's a lot of work that is needed because society does a damn good job at reinforcing those narratives for us. Because otherwise we would have so much time writing so many comedy shows. Jesus fucking Christ.
So one final thing I want to ask you about is political correctness. See, there's this sense or discussion nowadays that people think, or mostly men think, you can't joke about anything anymore. I mean, what do you guys think about this? Has there been a joke where you've been worried about getting cancelled, and what are your
I
thoughts?
don't think cancel culture works.
No,
It does not work.
UCK is
I
back.
tried to I tried to cancel my marriage. I'm still married. I don't think it works, first of all. And yes, I mean, I'm very, very passionate about this discussion because I've had these with so many comedians. So when I feel like, in my experience, most comics, when they start, it's a very, very human thing to pick low hanging fruits in comedy, as we say, and punch down. because it's easier, because it's a mirror to the society. Most people sitting in your audience will laugh at the expense of someone else, because that's how we've been raised, and the mainstream pop culture has been like this on TV or whatever it is. So I feel like when you start as a comedian, you want to make people laugh, and you will do anything. So you pick the low hanging fruits. So even, to be very honest, when I started, I was not really thinking about if I'm punching down, punching. I didn't even know, like, there are things that you can do. But I feel like the more I grew as an artist, I started differentiating between my personal lived and shared experiences versus the experiences that are not mine. So as a comedian, I will not tell any other comedian to not talk about that. That's my personal rule. I think in comedy you can joke about everything, and anything is a topic that can be made fun of. What you need to see is, um, if let's say, just for an example, if you're trying to make a joke about something at the expense of someone, and that person is in the audience, is that person laughing? If, because for sometimes to talk about something that is not usually spoken about, it's also a relief, it's a psychological relief. So even to get included in the fact that, oops, I'm worthy enough to be made fun of, is sometimes feels very inclusive to a lot of people. But at the same time, when I grew more as an artist, what I realized is that every punch down joke is a punch up joke if you sit down for 10 more minutes, is my experience with comedy. So, because I have done workshops, I have done joke writing workshops, and in India, there are these male open micers, and we would jam. And usually, because of their experience in life and bias, they would come with a punchline, which is always punching down. And we would sit down, and I would give them a different punchline, which still said the same thing, but it was punching up. So what I realized is that is possible. But now what happens is most comedians, or especially male comedians who get called out or called in for that matter, tend to get defensive that we can't joke about anything now, cancel culture and all of that. It's also the problem with cancel culture is most people who suffer because of cancel culture. I do not believe in cancel culture. I'm also have a problem with that. But most people who suffer because of that are also medium or mid-tier level comics who are just starting out. If they say something problematic, they don't get the scope of redemption or to change themselves. But if famous, well-paid comedians do that, and then they start crying about, like, I got cancelled, and they're still getting awards and they're still doing shows. Ricky Gervais is not even funny. I am waiting for him to make, offend me. He's not even funny. So I feel like they make more noise, and they still get to keep earning money, keep getting the chance to go on stage and improve themselves for that matter, right? So I feel like, yes, most comedians who get very defensive. Daniel Sloss recently said that, when people call you out for saying something problematic, it's not they're not canceling you. They're literally yelling at you. You did not get cancelled, you got yelled, because they did not like what you just said. And if as a comedian you get defensive and not just try to rework the same punchline, then probably comedy is not for you, because you're too weak for comedy. Because that's the whole thing, right? If you get yelled at by the audience and you feel like, oh, maybe my punchline is not working, male comedians often tend to blame the audience, then, come back home and try to work on the same punchline. Because, like I said, every punch down joke can be a punch up joke if you just do a little bit more work. But I think, yeah, some people don't want to do that, because thanks to this world we are living in. So I think that's where I stand on
Yeah.
this.
And I think a big thing with, oh, we can't joke about anything anymore, is that, yeah, as Anshita said, you need to be punching up, and it's possible. But another thing is that you need to be perceived correctly leading up to that joke, right? So, like, and that is where appearances and everything come in. Like, I have so many jokes about wanting to be a trophy wife. Oh my god. uh, and I don't look like one, but I want to be one. But because life would be so much easier. um but or I have a male comedian friend here who's a really really cool guy, and he's a feminist, and he's such a cool person, and he has so many jokes. So he makes jokes about being vegan. He actually is vegan, but because he looks like a stereotypical hashtag gym bro, then he goes on stage and he starts talking about, oh, the problem with this or that, like this is going to lead to a really great punchy uppy feminist punchline, but people are already like, you can hear like this, there's the sphincters clenching in the room because they're like, oh fuck, this is going to be another Joe Rogan thing. It's not. But so then in those instances, I think it's just like, also we as comics, we have to be like, what is the first impression that we're setting, and how well do these people know us? Like if you are a famous comedian, then chances are that everybody in that audience already knows about you. They've seen your stuff, they've looked you up on social media, they have a framework of who you are as a person, which is why like your family members are so funny inside the house, but if people are coming over who have never met them, they're like, holy shit, because they don't have the framework. And the same thing happens with the
This is so
jokes.
true. This is so true. This it remind me of my dad. My dad thinks I'm funny because he's funny, and he's just most of the times being like saying problematic shit outside. It's like, please do not open your mouth. Just tell all of this to me, and I'll tell you how to punch this up. This reminded me of that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like, it's also like how we are perceived, and if like I realized that I couldn't do jokes about racism because I'm a white bitch. And I had some really good jokes, but I realized that these people don't know me. These people simply don't know me, and what they see is a borderline Karen starting to speak on stage. And I was like, that this is not what I want to be perceived as. This is not what I want to do. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to leave those jokes to people who are actually from those communities and actually are doing a lot better job at those jokes, because they actually know a lot more what they're talking about. So I can be an ally by just, keeping the space open for these people and putting them on stage and not talking about these things myself. So it's like hashtag humbling experiences as well, that,
Yeah, it's the same thing, no? Shared and lived experiences.
yeah.
So now that I have more agency as a comic, so it's like a personal rule that I only talk about shared or lived experiences. So when you do that, when it's your own experience, you can do punch up, punch down, horizontal, upstairs. You can do anything you want because it's your experience, and you can cope with it using comedy, or you can joke about it the way you want. But if I'm going to talk about an experience that's not mine, but it's just an opinion, then I would actually go and do research. I will talk to more people and ask them, because even if one person has an opinion about the experience, the same, there could be a different person with the same privilege level but has a completely different experience. It has happened to me. It happened to me in a show in Cologne. So I have a set about catcalling, and like Mari said, like I am perceived as this Indian woman, nice, very homely, and I talk about that how I miss my catcallers a lot, because and this sexual desires, and I spoke about that. So I think I used to have a joke about rape at some point, and I have had experiences where I almost escaped rape in my life. So when, as a comedian, I want to like give trigger warning, anyone who's listening. But yeah, when I started to kind of process those childhood traumas, and I realized that, because my go-to was use humor as a coping mechanism, which my therapist is like that's her, like 70% of income comes from me. So so I think yeah, I wrote a joke about rape, and then I went on and did on stage. I was doing that bit for almost a year, and then in the audience, there was a woman who came up to me after the show and said it made me really uncomfortable because she was raped. And yeah, so and it was really an eye opening for me. But during the same show, it was very interesting that during the show, it's also sad that I'm saying this, but it's an experience. So that during the same show, there was another woman, trigger warning, unfortunately, she was raped as well, and she felt included. So we had a very intense discussion after the show where it was me and these two women, and the woman who felt included was trying to kind of, and I mean, at that point I was just a listener because they were talking to each other. But at the end, it became so cathartic. They hugged and they cried, and I cried, and it was very, I still don't have an opinion about it, but then I became more mindful of it. So I think I stopped doing that bit, or I do it. I have reworked that bit as well, so it sounds more punching up, and it's not just an opinion, or it's not just a commentary, or it's not just a smart, funny one-liner punchline that I came up with. So if I have made a rule that if I'm going to speak about it, I will tell the story and context as well, and not just do like a one liner thing and fuck off and make so many people in the audience triggered or uncomfortable
Yeah.
because of that one experience. So I do know that that same joke made someone feel really included, and then the same joke made someone feel really excluded in the same show. So this is like sometimes it's a slippery slope. So I think with more experience and with more expertise and with more agency as a comic, for example, you can choose. I don't want to do this tonight, and I don't want to do this joke ever, or I will do it only in the setups. So it's not like, when people say, oh, I can't do this, or you can't joke about anything, or you can't say this. It's mostly because, they've been talking about other experiences. So, and now people are telling them that you can't do that. You actually, it was never cool to do this, but it was normalized.
We've got enough power to call you out, and that's what
Yeah,
you find uncomfortable.
yeah, yeah,
Because the
Yeah.
people you were joking about were always uncomfortable about those jokes.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. They just didn't say anything or were told not to say anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Well, ending on a high note.
Well, but this is important, and this is also why for our show in Budapest we are adding a Q&A section after the show. So, just so that we can actually open these topics, because yeah, sometimes it's like the joke ends on a high, but after the high, after the punchline, actually comes a whole lot of baggage that we don't get to discuss in a framework of a performance, right? And so this is why we are also adding this bit, so that we can actually sit down with the audiences and be like, well, what do you think?
Yeah.
What is it? What is it about it? Like, what made you feel uncomfortable, and why was it? And should we, look into some of those things? And I'm so excited about that.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I'm actually doing a spot tonight. It's a very famous storytelling space in Amsterdam, but they have rules. And this person sent me a line, one of the rules, and it really really moved me. And this is something that I really believe in. But I want to say that when we are doing the clitoris act, we are talking about a lot of issues that can be very hard to sometimes digest. But I want to tell the people who are listening and the audience that we speak from the scar and not the wound. So I think
Yeah.
it's what this person also told me, that when you tell the story, we just request you to say the story from the scar and not the wound. I personally make it a point that I'm not using the stage time for psychological relief now. I am processing a lot of things in therapy. People who are listening, listen, I do not really miss my cat collars. Um, I am processing all of that in therapy, but I am using the stage to tell my story, my experiences, my shared experiences. And I think I can say the same for Mari. We are
Yeah.
talking about our experiences. We have unlearned a lot of things. We have healed from a lot of things. We are processing. We have more tools and agency to process a lot of hard things when it comes to especially body standards. So, which is why, we can use humor in a
Yeah.
healthy way to channel all the anger and all the experiences that we have. It's not about just coming on stage and talking about something which is hard to hear just to shock the audience.
Yeah.
That's not what we are
No.
aiming for. And that's why we reached Lazy Women, because we didn't want to find a venue, put up a show, and go there and say things. We wanted to work with a feminist organization that understands the area, that understands what could the consequences be if we do a show here. And that's how we wanted to collaborate with other people who understand the area better than we do. So because we don't want to come there and you know
Drop a bomb and then leave on the first train out. Yeah.
yeah, so we are very mindful about that, and we're really grateful that we found Lazy Women, and I am glad that this is happening.
Yeah. And most importantly, tragedy plus time equals comedy,
Comedy, yeah.
which is a rule that we go by.
And I have to say, Celine, I love the questions you ask, because I'm so tired of the question, how does it feel like to be a woman in comedy? It's
Yes.
been 5 years. I've been doing it for 5 years, but I really like especially the last set of questions that you asked, the punchline gap, the political correctness, the cancel culture. Nobody's asking that. So good job on curating these questions. It was really nice.
Yes, every single one of those questions could have been a 1 hour episode on its own.
Yeah, that's true. Well, thank you both so much for doing this, and I hope to catch your show sometime. I am soon giving birth, so unfortunately it won't be very soon. But yeah,
We hope to see you as well someday in the audience.
Yeah.
Because